Good afternoon and welcome to our Australia Market Update, People to People's weekly employment and job market trends breakdown. My name's 𝗵𝗺𝗀𝗀. I'm the North Shore manager here at People to People. Coming up on today's show, what does Australia's talent landscape really look like as we close out 2025? This week, we're joined by Ross Clennett, high-performance recruitment coach and host of the Recruitment News Australia Podcast, to unpack the state of Australia's employment environment through 2025 and explore the shifting expectations on both sides of the hiring equation. Also on today's show, wages on the rise, but what does this mean for 2026? We'll explore our latest job opportunities across Australia, and lastly, new year, new career, when are job seekers planning to begin their search? Australia's talent landscape in 2025 has been shaped by a year of steady but uneven recovery, with employers and job seekers navigating a market that continues to stabilise after the volatility of previous years. While confidence has slowly returned across several industries, the hiring environment has remained cautious. Job ads have nudged upwards in recent months, but overall activity remains softer than this time last year, sitting at 7.3% lower year on year. As the year draws to a close, the question is now where Australia's employment market is headed next. Many are hopeful for a more confident 2026, but the trends we saw throughout 2025, cautious recruitment, evolving candidate expectations, and a continued focus on retention may still play a major factor in shaping how businesses and job seekers approach the year ahead. To discuss this further, we're joined today by Ross Clennett, high-performance recruitment coach and host at Recruitment News Australia Podcast. Hi, Ross. How are you today?
Hi, Aidan. I'm very well. Good to be joining you.
It's good to have you on. Thanks for coming on. I wanted to ask a few questions. So to start off, for those who don't know, could you tell us a bit about yourself, your background, as well as the podcast Recruitment News Australia?
Sure. I'm originally from Hobart. I completed a degree at the University of Tasmania and went off backpacking, finished up in London, and went to a recruitment agency to find a job, and they offered me one as a recruiter. So at the age of 22 and a half, in a city I'd never lived in, I started recruiting permanent accountants. So this was the beginning of 1989. And then I returned to Australia and worked for a business that ultimately became known as Recruitment Solutions, where I spent 10 years. And I then went out, became self-employed as a recruitment coach and trainer, where I've been for the last 22 years. I'm also a keen blogger. I've been producing a weekly blog since 2007, so it's close to 900 blogs, about 1 million words I've written over that period of time. I'm a keynote speaker at conferences about recruitment, the recruitment industry and the labour market. And I also, as you mentioned, I co-host Recruitment News Australia, which is a podcast. It's been running for nearly 3 years now.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And how would you describe the employment and job market in Australia throughout 2025?
Well, there's, I think, 5 things that are probably the headline pieces of data, Aidan. Firstly, if you look at the last 12 months, unemployment, the unemployment rate's risen slightly. This time last year it was 3.9%. It's now 4.3%. Historically, that's still very low. Prior to the COVID lockdowns, unemployment or the unemployment rate was around 5% or higher. Secondly, total employment growth, that has slowed. So if you look at the total number of jobs added to the Australian economy in the past 12 months, it's about 230,000 seasonally adjusted, which sounds okay, but when you compare it to the same 12-month period immediately the year before, it was 387,000 jobs. So jobs growth has only been about 2/3 of what it was the previous year. The other significant thing is the greater proportion of part-time jobs. So in the Australian economy, about 69% of jobs are full-time jobs. So the ABS describes that or denotes that as 35 hours a week or more, regardless of whether it's a casual, temporary contract or permanent job. And in the past 12 months, we've found rather than the long-term 69%, that it's only been 51% of jobs that has been in full-time jobs. Vacancies you've already mentioned. We've found, unfortunately, private sector vacancies have gone backwards in the past 12 months, down 2.6%, while the public sector has in fact risen. It's gone up by 7.4%. So a lot of jobs growth really has been supported by taxpayer dollars. And then finally, SEEK report highest number of applicants per job, average number of applicants per job in the history of the SEEK job report. So there's been a lot of applicants going for the available jobs. So I'd say they're the 5 major trends.
Yeah, definitely. On a day-to-day basis, I'm experiencing a lot of candidates calling in saying they're skilled, they've got everything in terms of what the job requirement is, but not even getting an interview. So I've definitely heard the same experience. People are really struggling with the amount of applications coming through. So while job ads have nudged up slightly in the recent months, they're still down to 7.3% compared to the same time last year. When you look back at 2025, which hiring challenges stand out as the biggest hurdle for employers for you, Ross?
Well, I think the major one is what we've just been talking about, Aidan, which is the number of applicants. It's not just the volume, it's the rapid adoption of generative AI in the way candidates prepare cover letters and resumes. And research has proved that, in fact, it's harder now for employers to distinguish the higher caliber candidates based on applications, because Gen AI is raising everyone's standard up, and it makes it more of a lottery when it comes to employers selecting those candidates to interview, and are finding more frequently that they are disappointed by the standard of the candidate in the interview compared to the standard of the application that candidate submitted. Second thing is really the mismatch in the Australian labour market with respect to demand and supply. I mean, just to give you one simple example. So according to official ABS data, we've got around 650,000 people who are unemployed or counted as unemployed. But if you look beyond that, we find, and this is just recent data that's been released, there's around 700,000 Australians who are not working due to a health condition, but would like to be working. We've got another 800,000 people who work part-time but want more hours than they are getting at the moment, and around 110,000 people caring for children, typically women, but not exclusively, who want to work part-time, don't have part-time work, and are not looking for part-time work simply because their experience is they can't find work that suits their hours or availability. I think the other thing is cost of living is hitting hard. So even though candidates may not be working, they still want to be paid fairly. And the other differential, and this would be well known to your listeners who are not in a metropolitan or capital city area, is that it's much harder to find skilled workers in regional parts of Australia compared to the urban parts of Australia.
Yeah, no, some interesting data there. On the other side of that, what were the biggest changes you noticed in how job seekers approach their job searching flexibility and salary expectations for 2025?
Well, Elmo, which is a software product, they have an employee sentiment index. And in the most recent data release, which was earlier in the month, they highlighted that employees were less likely to be seeking a career change. So they termed that job hugging. So the previous quarter, 23% of people surveyed were considering a career move, but in the current quarter, it was only 18%. So that's a a very, very significant difference. I think AI is making a difference in that, particularly in white collar, employees are very conscious whether their employer is on the front foot with respect to the use of AI and training employees in AI. And so we see, again, in the same survey, about 61% of employees said they'd consider leaving their organisation if their career growth or skills development stalled, specifically with respect to improvements in generative AI. I think it's very obvious that a large proportion of white-collar candidates are very concerned about the redundancy of their skills if they're not provided with the opportunity to upskill in their current role in terms of Gen AI, and are looking sort of nervously as to what their options might be if they're really not getting that growth and develop inside their own organisation. I think the other thing is clearly flexible work. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt, and again, you look at the surveys, that employees really prioritise that, and that it's pretty consistent that they're willing to forego pay rises or have lower pay rises for greater flexibility. And those employers who are offering more flexibility are generally having a better choice of higher caliber candidates.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Our salary and market report, one of the biggest demands from our employees, was AI tech and upskilling. So it's really interesting that, that was part of your research as well. What would you say moving forward is the overall health and direction for Australia's talent market for next year, for 2026?
I think the trends that we've discussed, Aidan, are going to be more pronounced. So I think you're going to find, regardless of how tough employers have found with applications in 2025, I think that's going to be even tougher in 2026. And frankly, I know I'm biased, but this is where the recruitment agency industry is going to come into their own, because employers will just throw up their hands in frustration in attempting to differentiate the best candidates. And they're going to go to recruitment agencies and say, I can't be bothered recruiting my own role. It's too difficult. Please send me the best 4 candidates that you've got so I don't have to sift through them. So I'm predicting a bit of a renaissance for the recruitment industry, and those recruitment agencies that are very good at differentiating the best candidates and can verify that those candidates do have the skills that they say they have and they are who they say they are, because deep fakes is another issue that's very prominent in America right now, and I suspect it's more prominent in Australia than we would be led to believe. We're simply not seeing articles about it, but I would imagine, given what I understand, that many employers have been duped by people who are not who they say they are, and they've had their systems compromised by nefarious actors who they thought were a high caliber remote working employee.
Yeah, it's a scary thought of the future, but I agree. We still need the humans in all of the roles, from my opinion, especially within recruitment. So yeah,
without doubt.
Will still be around, but and very, very useful. But looking towards next year, which of the 2025 trends do you expect to continue having the biggest impact on the workforce strategies and planning?
I think the skill shortages that we've seen in the last 2 years will continue. So if you look at the jobs that are officially most short in terms of supply, we've got aged, disability carers, primary school teachers, secondary school teachers, truck drivers, electricians, childcare workers. They're all jobs that I will suspect where you're going to have fewer candidates than there are jobs. I do think job security will continue to be a significant issue for employees, and they're going to prioritise that over perhaps other aspects. But on the other side of that, flexibility is very important. And certainly it's been proven over and over that you have a greater likelihood of having a more diverse workforce when you offer flexibility, because people who have caring responsibilities, people with disabilities, you're opening up opportunities or more opportunities for people like that when you're not demanding that they come into the office 5 days a week. And one of the great challenges of not just Australia, but other developed countries is making sure workforce participation continues to grow, because with our ageing population and our declining birth rate, it's very important that we continue to keep people in the labour market longer. And our current labour force participation rate's about 67%, which is pretty good because it has grown steadily. But you compare it to somewhere like New Zealand, which is nearly 72%. So we're still a fair way short of a high tide mark like New Zealand. And certainly the government continues to, or needs to continue to do their part to ensure that we have strong labour market participation, because that's good for employers. It means more choice. It's good for workers because it means more opportunities, and it's good for the taxpayer because we're paying less in social security benefits, including unemployment benefits.
Great. Thank you for them. Yeah, super helpful and insightful insights there, Ross. If you want to check out Ross's, any of his content, social media, we can reach out to you on any social media platforms, Ross.
Yeah, look, I think LinkedIn is probably the easiest. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, you can find all of my blogs at rossclennett.com. You'll just see the blog tab on the home page. You can subscribe to my free weekly newsletter, and the Recruitment News Australia podcast is available as a free release every Tuesday, 20 minutes of up-to-date recruitment news, and that's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favourite podcast platform.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ross. I really appreciate your time.
Pleasure, Aidan. Anytime.
So looking at the numbers, the recent wage price index for Australia was released, and it shows that wages rose 0.8% in the September quarter for 2025, the same quarterly increase as in June 2025. Over the last 12 months to September, wages have increased by 3.4%, matching the annual pace for the previous quarter. In sector breakdown, so private sector wages grew by 0.7% in the quarter and 3.2% year on year. The public sector wages rose by 0.9% in the quarter and 3.8% over the year. Roughly the same share of jobs saw a wage change in the quarter as a year earlier, which is 45%, but the average hourly wage changed size, edged down a little from about 3.7% to 3.5%. According to media reports on the release, the annual 3.4% pay rise slightly outpaced consumer inflation, which was around 3.2% for the same period, meaning a small increase in real wages for the average worker. Real wages have finally inched up, with the wage growth slightly outpacing inflation, signalling stabilization in the labour market and easing pressure on workers. What it could mean for the next quarter is that wage growth is slightly going to plateau. So with similar or slightly softer increases expected as fewer large renegotiated agreements flow through and labour market conditions cool. So looking at the hot jobs today, are you being paid the right salary? Check out People to People's new online salary guide to compare your salary against others in your industry to gain insights into the market, Australian market, and be prepared for your next job interview. You can visit People to People's website for more information or read through the jobs on screen. That's all we have time for today, but if you'd like to reach out to me with any recruitment news, if you want to have a chat with what's going on in the market in Sydney's North Shore, please feel free to reach out on my details below. And thanks for watching.